Will you share about full self-realization? In my own self, it's an unfolding process,
Yeah.
whatever that spaciousness is.
Yeah.
Always I am wanting more of it in my life.
Yeah.
But I also know that it's not about more.
It's not about more. There was a time I was believing that I have to work, and eventually sometime something will be offered, called self-realization. Sometime, somewhere, there is the big explosion, and that's the end of the story. Over the years, then the ideas, what that should be, changed, but still, that idea was there for a long time. And then suddenly all this started to crumble down. It didn't make any sense anymore. Mm-hmm. You cannot draw a map how things should unfold. You cannot say that's how it's going to be, that's how it has to be. It's possible that suddenly you rotate into a totally new perspective. And everything looks different. Well, on the surface it looks the same. You perceive yourself different, you perceive this whole crazy story different. That simply means one chapter is closed and a new one starts. And from there it continues. It's possible that you leave suffering behind for good. That the whole thing becomes a play, a divine play. Essentially, you are not going to change. There is not really such a thing like self-realization because you are already real. You are never apart from that. We may have all kinds of ideas about ourselves, and the ideas change. The ideas, they create the barriers of our perception, and we think in the same lines all the time that it seems so limited, and at a certain point you may let that go. You may become aware of the essence of you that is not affected by anything that is happening. Any so-called spiritual experience or mundane experience. But the experience of that will unfold, and there's no limit to it, there's no end to it. It's not that at a certain point you just say, okay, now, I've got it all. Wherever you are with your experience, there is still infinity beyond. But you can't stop suffering by learning to bring the attention back home to that aspect of yourself that is not affected by any of this. Instead of being always so concerned about our self-image, that idea we have about ourselves, the me, I, me, mine, creating that sense of separation, me separate from the whole rest of existence, we can detach from that and see this is just a role that I'm playing in the theater of this world. It's not what I am. There's something prior to that that makes all this possible. And you can learn to bring your attention back to that. At least attempt. And gradually you sink deeper and deeper. And if you keep going, maybe one day your attention goes so deep rooted into that you don't lose it anymore. But still, then the experience of that will start to unfold. And there's no limit to that. There's not an end that you can say, this is the final. You are already that. We simply misunderstand it. And then we hook into that misunderstanding, are attached to that idea we have about ourselves. And once it's established, the tendency is that from the moment one wakes up till one goes to sleep, we pour in all our creativity, all our life force, all our energy. It's going round and round and round, that me, the very, very important me. That I in that personality is just a reflection. Catch the I at that point and follow it back to the source, to that sense of presence that is prior to that. And learn to relax in that. Yes?
I have a question about Kundalini Yoga.
Kundalini!
Yes. When you were told concentrate in the third eye, and when it's ready, it goes up, or you send it up. Is it useful to do like that?
She asks whether it is useful to try to awaken the Kundalini. That's basically what you are talking.
He awakens the Kundalini.
Sorry?
He awakens the Kundalini and brings it up to the third eye.
That teacher
Yes.
is doing that for you. Brings it up to the third eye. And then you have to bring it up the rest of the... Well, there is such a thing like Kundalini, but don't take the descriptions too literally. It happens differently in different people. There is a change of energy in your body, and if you feel so inclined, you can put your attention on that and work with that. But if you are not interested in doing that, this will happen all by itself, gently, just by becoming more conscious. You may not even be aware of the changes that are happening. They may be so gentle and gradual that you don't know that it is changing. You ask whether I think it's useful. If you feel drawn to it, if you feel like practicing like this, yes, it's useful. But if you don't feel like doing that, then never mind about it. After a period when all kinds of energetic stuff started to happen in my body, then I thought I have now to inform myself about it, and I started to read about Kundalini, simply to find out that everybody tells another story. Read books like The Serpent Power of Woodruff, and all that he describes what is happening in the chakras and how they are looking. I thought it's very poetic, it's very artistic, but somehow I couldn't relate to the whole stuff at all. First I was a bit caught up with that idea that somehow from the bottom of the spine something should rise, but then later I felt actually energy always rising right from the feet up the whole body. And the chakras are there, but there are energy centers all over the body, in the joints, in the organs, in the hands, in the feet. The point is that we start to undo the knots that are there because of mental knots. That we somehow learn to make this into a harmonious functioning psychophysical manifestation, that it becomes a useful expression of the self. You can come to that in different ways. The one who is attracted by the jnana will focus mainly on consciousness, observing the mind, learning to let go the old mechanisms that create trouble all the time. Maybe asking the question, who am I? Focusing mainly on consciousness. The devotee will focus mainly on love. Here they talk only about consciousness. It's a jnana place. Consciousness, even the pure consciousness, is not that essence. It's already an expression. The pure consciousness is the first expression, but it's not the only one. It has three aspects. It's consciousness, it's love, and it's the force of life, the energy. And you can focus on one or the other, or from the beginning somehow combine them. The devotee is focusing more on love. In the beginning it may be very emotional, God and I and all the devotional stuff, but if it's sincere, then it goes deeper than the emotion. And the devotee starts to become aware of that divine presence all the time, becoming aware that he is not separate from that. And that divine presence is the same presence that jnani is touching, asking, who am I? Or the yogi may focus more on the vital force, on the prana, or the chi, learning to be aware of that flow that is always there, becoming aware that there is not that me separate from the whole rest, but you are in touch with the whole cosmic prana. And then there may be all kinds of Kundalini stuff going on. If that prana is harmonizing, the mind is calming down all by itself. If the mind is getting quieter through the jnana practice, then the prana is harmonizing and calming itself all by itself. You can focus more on one or the other, or you can combine them right from the beginning. But if it goes deeper, somehow, even if you focus on one, if it really sincerely goes deeper, then the other aspects invariably also will flow into it. If that is not happening, then we are remaining totally superficial. We can study the jnana texts, we can discuss jnana for hours and hours. If the heart is not opening, it is not going very deep. We can do a lot of yoga and exercises and maybe start to feel a bit the prana, maybe develop some kind of abilities. If the heart is not opening, it doesn't go very deep. And the devotee who is very emotional, if that calmness is not coming, if that clarity is not starting to come, then that devotion also will remain very superficial. Somehow the three come together, but we can focus more on one or the other. And if you are attracted to yogic practices and Kundalini, fine. But it's not a must. It's not that you have to do something, bring that Kundalini up. Sometimes people think that when the Kundalini goes up to the head, then that's the final realization. No, You may have all kinds of experiences, but what really counts is then you become quiet. And Nityananda, not the Nityananda from that ashram, the old Swami Nityananda, he was a yogi, true and true. And he says, okay, the yogi is bringing the Kundalini up with pranayamas and exercises. And when the Kundalini is up, he didn't say that's the end of the story. Then the yogi starts to focus. Then the yogi starts to concentrate. It's not the end of the story, the Kundalini reaching here. Yes?
Can you talk about real love?
About?
Real love.
Real love.
Yes.
Right. The difficulty with love is that different things are called love. So our vocabulary is misleading. Most of the time people talk about love and mean the emotion. But an emotion, by definition, is always changing. It's not that you can build up an emotion and then that emotion is there all the time. Emotions come in waves. It comes, it has a peak, it goes. Sometimes it's more, sometimes less. And then people hear that you should love everybody and try to emotionally love everybody, and it becomes totally neurotic. It can't be done. You cannot emotionally love everybody all the time the same. Sometimes it pours to one person, then it's withdrawn a bit, then it pours in another direction. But there is something else, which is not an emotion, which is simply there, which is all-pervading. But the more powerful you are conscious, the more of that will flow through you. And that one is totally impersonal. Doesn't care about, I like this one, I don't like that one. It simply flows. It's not something that you can artificially do, but you can put your attention in the right direction. You can attempt to open your heart. You can, even if it's emotional to begin with, learn to love yourself. Learn to love God. Learn to love the creation. And not be so partial. I love this one, I don't love that one, I love this one if he gives me back what I want. And then more and more you will become aware something is always there. And that is flowing. For the mind, actually quite a scary thing, because it's totally unconcerned. It's totally impersonal. No matter in what way we are approaching, the difficulty for us is somehow to deal with the fact that we cannot do it, and yet we have to do something about it. We cannot, by act of will, for example, you cannot by an act of will love. Let that real love flow. You cannot by an act of will be in pure consciousness. You cannot by an act of will feel that your prana is connected with the cosmic prana. But we can turn the attention in the right direction, and in that way we make ourselves available, and then things start to happen, not out of our personal volition, but from a cosmic volition. We can do a lot to prevent it. With all our personal concerns, with all the tensions that we are creating in the mind, all the concerns about me, do they like me, don't they like me, what are they thinking about me, what are they talking about me, am I going to be successful, what is going to happen to me, all this personal concern is like creating those barriers that pure being cannot manifest, cannot be perceived. So it's not so much that we have to learn how to do that, but to become aware what we are doing all the time and learn not to do that anymore. And then you will start to become aware of that love. It's there. It has never been absent. It's there with everybody, with everything. It's like the glue that is flowing through this creation and is connecting everything.